The number is wrong. Everyone calls them the 47 Ronin. It's in the title. It's carved into history. But on the night of the actual attack, there were 46 men at the mansion. The 47th had already been sent away, or deserted, or was ordered to leave before the reckoning began. The accounts don't agree, and that ambiguity has followed this story for over 300 years. So even the most basic fact, the number these men are named for, turns out to be more complicated than it looks. That fits. Because this entire story is built on a contradiction that no one at the time could fully resolve, and that historians still argue about today. These men broke the law to honor it. They committed murder to fulfill their duty. And the government that condemned them also praised them, simultaneously, in the same breath, with the same order. The shogunate honored their loyalty and executed them for it at the same time, and couldn't find a way to do one without the other. In April 1701, 2 imperial envoys arrived in Edo from Kyoto. 3 provincial lords were assigned to receive them, one of whom was Asano Naganori, the daimyo of Akko. Court ceremony was intricate, and these men weren't fluent in it, so they were directed to a shogunate official named Kira Yoshinaka, an expert in protocol, and a man who expected to be paid for his expertise. The other 2 lords gave Kira lavish gifts. Asano offered something token. Kira noticed, and Kira made sure Asano noticed that he noticed. Through weeks of deliberate humiliation, persistent taunting, and calculated disrespect inside the shogun's own palace. On April 21st, Asano snapped. In the audience hall of the shogun's residence, he drew a dirk and went for Kira. The wound was minor. The consequences were not. Drawing a weapon inside Edo Castle was an absolute prohibition. The location mattered more than the reason, more than the provocation, more than anything Kira had done. Asano was ordered to commit seppuku the same day. His lands were confiscated. His family was ruined. His retainers, every samurai who had served him, were stripped of their lord and left without purpose or status. They became Ronin, leaderless men. And Kira? Kira received no punishment. He returned to his official duties. He became, of all things, an object of sympathy. The law had been applied, completely, correctly, lethally, and it had produced a result that looked nothing like justice. That gap, between what the law demanded and what it delivered, is where this story actually lives. Because Asano's former retainers understood something the shogunate either couldn't or wouldn't acknowledge. The system had protected the man who caused the incident and destroyed the man who reacted to it. The law had not failed. It had worked exactly as designed. And the outcome was a grotesque imbalance that every samurai who understood Bushido could see plainly. If you're finding this as fascinating as I do, go ahead and hit like. It genuinely helps this channel reach people who want history this sharp and this complicated. The man who held the surviving retainers together was Oishi Kuranosuke, Asano's chief chamberlain. He had every reason to act immediately. He had furious men, a clear target, and a cause that the public was already sympathetic toward. He didn't act, not yet, not for nearly 2 years. Oishi understood that Kira would be watching for exactly this kind of retaliation. Shogunate spies were tracking the Akko men. Any obvious preparation, purchasing weapons, gathering too frequently, maintaining the bearing of men with a plan, would end the mission before it started. So Oishi made a calculated decision to become, in every observable way, someone who had given up. He moved to Kyoto. He spent money in the geisha districts. He drank to excess. He was reportedly found passed out in the streets, in postures no samurai would tolerate being seen in. He divorced his wife, a practical act, some historians argue, to remove her from the legal consequences of what was coming, though it cost him something real to do it. The term for this kind of strategic uselessness is hiru andon, a daylight lantern, burning but visibly producing nothing, serving no purpose anyone could see. There's a story from this period that sharpens the contradiction. A samurai from Satsuma named Murakami crossed paths with Oishi, and seeing a man he took for a coward, tried to provoke him into action, insulting him, pushing at his honor, testing whether anything was still alive underneath the performance. Oishi didn't react. The insults landed and produced nothing. Murakami walked away convinced he'd been right about the man. Later, when he learned the truth, when he understood that the degradation had been the plan all along, Murakami went to the temple where Oishi would eventually be buried, and committed seppuku in front of his grave to atone for the insult. The shame of having misjudged him was, apparently, unbearable. By December 1702, the operation was ready. Kira's surveillance had relaxed. The spies had concluded the Akko men were broken and directionless. The watch had been quietly scaled back. And on the night of the 14th, on ground covered in snow, 46 men moved toward Kira's mansion while he was hosting a tea party inside. One thing the legend consistently gets wrong is the polish. This wasn't a clean, disciplined strike by fully equipped warriors. Their armor was homemade. Buying proper equipment through normal channels would have attracted exactly the kind of attention they'd spent 2 years avoiding. They split into 2 groups and hit the mansion simultaneously from the front and rear gates. 61 of Kira's guards met them. The fight lasted approximately 90 minutes. When it was over, every guard had been subdued or killed. None of the Ronin had been lost. Then came the search. Kira wasn't in the main hall. He wasn't in any obvious position inside the house. One account has him discovered hiding in an outhouse. Another says the Ronin found a hidden entrance behind a large scroll, leading to a concealed courtyard. And inside it, a man whose identity was confirmed by a specific scar across his face, left by Asano's dagger the previous April. Oishi gave Kira a choice. He addressed him formally, told him plainly who they were and why they had come, and offered him the same dagger Asano had used to kill himself. He was inviting Kira to die as a samurai should, with dignity, by his own hand. The offer was extended with genuine respect, according to every account that survived. Kira crouched, speechless and trembling, and said nothing. He would not take the dagger. He couldn't be moved to action. In the end, Oishi ordered the other Ronin to hold him down and killed him by cutting off his head. The man who had been an expert in court ceremony, in the rituals that governed how a warrior should present himself, died hiding in a courtyard, unable to perform the one act that his own code demanded of him at the final moment. Asano had been forced to die honorably. Kira had been offered the chance and couldn't take it. The Ronin carried Kira's head across 10 kilometers of the city to Sengakuji Temple, where Asano was buried. They presented it at his grave, and as they walked, ordinary people came out to watch them, to praise them, to offer them food. The city understood immediately what had happened and what it meant. This was not a secret act. It was a public statement, which put the shogunate in an impossible position. The 46 men were now murderers under the law. There was no ambiguity about that. They had planned, coordinated, and executed a killing of a shogunate official in his own home with meticulous preparation. The law was clear. And yet the public didn't see murderers. They saw the fulfillment of everything the samurai code promised. They saw men who had maintained their loyalty through 2 years of humiliation, privation, and personal sacrifice, who had done exactly what Bushido said a retainer should do for a fallen lord. If the shogunate pardoned them, it was admitting that private vengeance was acceptable when the cause was sympathetic enough, which would mean the law applied only when the public mood agreed with it. That was a problem. But if the shogunate executed them as criminals, it was effectively punishing the most visible expression of samurai loyalty anyone had seen in a generation, which sent its own disturbing message about what the code was actually worth when tested. Shogun Tsunayoshi deliberated for 47 days. The number being exactly 47 may be coincidence, or may be the kind of numerical neatness that accrues to famous stories over time. What came out of that deliberation was a solution that wasn't really a solution at all. It was the contradiction formalized into an official order. The Ronin were commanded to die, not as criminals, as warriors, by seppuku, the honorable death reserved for samurai of standing. The sentence acknowledged their loyalty while punishing their crime in a single act with a single instrument. They were being executed in the manner reserved for men who had done something right, because, by the logic of the code the government itself was built around, they had done something right and wrong simultaneously, and there was no order the shogunate could issue that would separate those two things, because the same action was the source of both. 46 men died on March 20th, 1703, and were buried at Sengakuji alongside their lord. Their graves are still visited today. People still bring incense. And the 47th man, Terasaka Kichiemon, the lowest-ranked member of the group, the only one who wasn't technically Asano's direct vassal, survived. He was either sent away before the attack to carry news back to Akko, or ordered to leave before the men surrendered, or left on his own. The record remains genuinely unclear. He was pardoned, possibly because of his youth. He lived to 87. He was eventually buried with the others. If you want more history told at this level, where the facts push back against the story, subscribing keeps you in the rotation. There's more of this coming. The story the legend tells is clean, loyal warriors, noble sacrifice, justice delivered. A government that recognized greatness even as it punished it. The reality is messier and sharper. The armor was made at home to avoid detection. The leader spent 2 years performing his own moral destruction to preserve his purpose. The man they had come to kill died trembling in a courtyard, unable to speak. The 47th isn't even clearly one of the 47. And the government's response, honor them, kill them, simultaneously, wasn't a resolution. It was an admission that the contradiction had no resolution. The shogunate faced a situation where the law and the code it was built to protect had arrived at opposite conclusions about the same group of men. It couldn't rule in favor of one without ruling against the other. So it did both. It issued an order that was simultaneously a tribute and a death sentence, and called that justice. The 46 men who died at Sengakuji were executed precisely because they had done exactly what the system said a samurai should do. The shogunate that ordered their deaths also understood this, spent 47 days unable to find another answer, and in the end could only resolve the contradiction by making the men perform it with their own bodies, dying honorably for the act of being honorable. That's not a paradox that gets cleaner with distance. The closer you look, the sharper it gets. They were right to do it. They had to die for it. And the government that killed them knew both of those things were true at the same time and issued the order anyway, because there was no version of this story where the law and the code didn't demand opposite things from the same men.